When we think of Star Wars, the Clone Wars, it's easy to get lost in the epic battles, daring lightsaber duels, and the tragic fall of the Jedi Order. But beneath the surface of this galactic conflict lies a tapestry of secrets, subtle manipulations, and choices that shape the fate of the galaxy. The Clone Wars wasn't just a time of war, it was a chessboard where the Force, the Sith, and even destiny itself played their roles. Over the years, fans have uncovered hidden layers within the series, sparking debates and theories that go deeper than a Sarlacc pit. Why did Ahsoka truly leave the Jedi Order? Could Captain Rex have seen Anakin's darkness long before anyone else? And what if Ahsoka wasn't just another Padawan, but the Force's way of preparing a new chosen one? These are the questions that keep us coming back, long after the credits roll. The truth is, the Clone Wars wasn't just a fight between clones and droids, it was the crucible in which the galaxy's greatest heroes, villains, and forces of nature were tested. From Count Dooku's shadowy schemes to Palpatine's sinister manipulations, every move was part of a much larger game. Even the clones, bred for obedience, faced their own battles of free will and loyalty. And then there's the Force. It wasn't just a passive observer, it was an active player, influencing events in ways that still spark debate. From Ahsoka's departure being a test for Anakin, to the Bad Batch's extraordinary abilities being more than just genetic mutations, it's as if the Force itself had a plan. But was that plan one of balance or chaos? This is more than a recap or a retelling. It's an exploration of the hidden forces and forgotten truths behind one of the most compelling eras in the Star Wars saga. So grab your lightsaber or maybe just a cozy blanket and let's journey to a galaxy far, far away to uncover the secrets of Star Wars, the Clone Wars. Let's begin. The story of Ahsoka Tano is one of resilience, loss, and self-discovery, a journey that reflects the turbulent times of the Clone Wars and the unseen forces shaping its key players. But what if her departure from the Jedi Order wasn't solely her decision? What if Yoda, one of the wisest and most enigmatic figures in the galaxy, had quietly nudged her toward a path that would save her from the Jedi's tragic fate? Yoda was no stranger to the currents of the Force. Over his centuries of life, he had honed an unparalleled ability to sense the ripple effects of choices and events before they unfolded. During the Clone Wars, however, the dark side clouded even his perceptions. Despite this, Yoda's connection to the Force remained strong, and it's possible that he foresaw Ahsoka's fate and acted accordingly, though his wisdom was often shrouded in mystery and subtlety. Ahsoka's departure from the Jedi Order was catalyzed by one of the darkest moments of her life, being falsely accused of a terrorist bombing and subsequently cast aside by the very institution she devoted herself to. While her innocence was eventually proven, the damage had been done. The trust she once had in the Jedi Council was shattered, leaving her no choice but to walk away. On the surface, Ahsoka's decision to leave seemed like a direct result of the Council's failure. But Yoda's actions during this period raise an intriguing question. Was he quietly guiding her toward this decision? Throughout Ahsoka's trial, Yoda's demeanor was unusually reserved. He allowed the process to unfold, offering no overt resistance to the Council's judgment. At the time, this could be interpreted as his adherence to Jedi protocol, but in hindsight, it feels deliberate, almost as if he knew she needed to leave. Yoda's unique ability to sense the Force often placed him in an impossible position. He could glimpse fragments of the future, but rarely with enough clarity to act decisively. It's plausible that Yoda foresaw some sort of devastation and recognized that Ahsoka needed to be far from the Jedi when it happened. Order 66, the devastation in question, wasn't just an end to the Jedi Order. It was a trap meticulously laid by Darth Sidious, targeting every Jedi who could stand against his rise. If Ahsoka had remained in the Order, her loyalty and sense of duty would have placed her on the front lines, making her a prime target during the Purge. By leaving, she unknowingly escaped this fate. Could Yoda have seen this coming? His cryptic advice to her at the end of her trial, "Your path, uncertain it is," hints at a deeper awareness. Yoda rarely spoke without purpose, and his words often carried layers of meaning. Was he subtly preparing her for the road ahead? Another compelling angle is the possibility that Yoda believed Ahsoka's departure was essential to the Force's larger plan. The Clone Wars were a time of imbalance, with the dark side gaining unprecedented strength. Ahsoka's journey outside the Jedi Order allowed her to grow in ways that would have been impossible within its rigid structure. She became a fulcrum, a balancing force in a galaxy teetering on the edge of chaos. Her later actions, from assisting the Rebel Alliance to mentoring future heroes like Ezra Bridger, were critical in restoring balance. None of this would have been possible had she remained bound by the Jedi's dogma. Yoda, with his deep understanding of the Force, may have recognized that Ahsoka's destiny lay beyond the Order, and his seemingly passive role during her trial was, in fact, a calculated move to set her free. For Yoda, guiding Ahsoka to leave wouldn't have been an easy decision. As a teacher and leader, he cared deeply for every Jedi under his watch, especially someone as promising and strong-willed as Ahsoka. Letting her go meant accepting the possibility that she might never return, that she could lose her way, or even fall to the dark side, as many others had. Yet Yoda's wisdom lay in his ability to see beyond immediate outcomes, trusting the Force to guide those who walked their own paths. This parallels Yoda's later interactions with Luke Skywalker during the original trilogy. Just as he allowed Ahsoka to leave, Yoda didn't stop Luke from facing Darth Vader despite the risks. In both cases, Yoda trusted the individuals to find their own strength and purpose, even if it meant stepping into the unknown. Ahsoka's departure didn't just save her from the Jedi Purge, it sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Her decision to leave challenged the Jedi Council, exposing their growing detachment and flawed leadership. It was a wake-up call, though one they largely ignored. For Anakin Skywalker, however, it was deeply personal. Ahsoka's absence left a void that fueled his feelings of betrayal and isolation, further pulling him toward the dark side. Yoda would have known the risks of this ripple effect. By guiding Ahsoka to leave, he may have inadvertently accelerated Anakin's fall. Yet, it's worth considering that Yoda might have seen even this as part of a larger plan. The Force works in mysterious ways, often requiring sacrifice and loss to achieve balance. Perhaps Yoda believed that Anakin's fall and eventual redemption were necessary steps in this cosmic journey. Looking back, Ahsoka's story is one of the most profound in the Star Wars saga. Her journey represents the resilience of hope, the importance of questioning authority, and the power of forging one's own path. Yoda's role in her departure, though subtle, highlights his understanding of the bigger picture. He didn't force her to leave, but he allowed the circumstances to unfold in a way that nudged her toward her destiny. The Force is often described as a guiding presence, weaving the fates of individuals into the grand tapestry of the galaxy. Yoda, as its most attuned servant, acted as its instrument, making painful yet necessary choices. Ahsoka's departure was one such choice, a moment that preserved her life and ensured her role in shaping the galaxy's future. Yoda's wisdom is often difficult to parse, shrouded in riddles and veiled in the language of the Force. Yet, in Ahsoka's case, his actions speak volumes. By guiding her to leave the Jedi Order, Yoda may have ensured her survival and set her on a path that would later prove vital to the galaxy's survival. It's a testament to his ability to see beyond the immediate and trust in the Force's greater plan. Ahsoka's journey reminds us that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope. Her resilience and strength serve as a beacon, not just for the characters within the Star Wars universe, but for fans who continue to be inspired by her story. And at the heart of it all lies a quiet, wise Jedi Master whose subtle guidance shaped the fate of one of the galaxy's greatest heroes. The Bad Batch has always been an anomaly in the Grand Army of the Republic, a squad of clones with enhanced abilities that set them apart from their brothers. Each member of Clone Force 99, as they were officially designated, possesses unique traits that made them invaluable on the battlefield and curiously distinct from the standardized legions of clones. Officially, these mutations were the result of Kaminoan genetic experimentation, an effort to refine and enhance Jango Fett's template. But the deeper we dig into the story of the Bad Batch, the more questions arise about whether these mutations were purely scientific or if some unseen force, perhaps the very Force itself, had a hand in their creation. The Bad Batch's story is tied closely to their genetic anomalies. Hunter's heightened senses, Wrecker's brute strength, Tech's genius intellect, Crosshair's unmatched marksmanship, and Echo's cybernetic enhancements all make them feel like legends plucked from galactic folklore, rather than soldiers bred in a sterile lab. These traits, while officially labeled as desirable mutations, came with unintended side effects, most notably their varying levels of resistance to the control exerted by their inhibitor chips during Order 66. Order 66 was the linchpin of Palpatine's master plan, the moment when the Republic's loyal army turned on the Jedi without hesitation. Inhibitor chips implanted in every clone ensured their compliance, suppressing free will and overriding personal loyalty. For most clones, the chips worked seamlessly. For the Bad Batch, however, things weren't so simple. Their genetic mutations, while enhancing their physical and mental abilities, also interfered with the chip's effectiveness. But this resistance was far from uniform or complete. Crosshair, for instance, experienced no such freedom from the chip's influence. His compliance during Order 66 was absolute, a stark reminder that the Bad Batch, for all their uniqueness, were not immune to the Kaminoans' programming. The chip heightened Crosshair's already intense sense of loyalty to his orders, making him an unwitting tool of the Emperor's design. This distinction is crucial, as it demonstrates that the Bad Batch's resistance wasn't a blanket immunity, but rather a byproduct of their non-standard genetic makeup. The theory that the Force specifically influenced their creation as a counterbalance to the dark side must be approached with this nuance in mind. Hunter, Wrecker, Tech, and Echo, by contrast, displayed varying levels of defiance during Order 66. Hunter, whose enhanced senses make him an exceptional leader, seemed instinctively resistant to the chip's influence, though it's unclear whether this was a result of his mutations or sheer willpower. Wrecker, despite his overwhelming physical strength, struggled more visibly with the programming, suggesting that his chip was still partially effective. Tech's intellectual superiority allowed him to analyze the situation with a level of detachment, but even he wasn't entirely free from the chip's potential influence. Echo, having been physically altered during his time as a prisoner of the Separatists, was already an outlier among the clones, further complicating the effectiveness of his chip. These varying responses point to a fascinating possibility: that the Bad Batch's unique traits created an inconsistency in the chip's programming, disrupting their intended function. This explanation is far more grounded in canonical evidence than the idea that the Force directly influenced their creation. The Kaminoans themselves, for all their scientific brilliance, had no known connection to or understanding of the Force. Their work was rooted in precise genetic engineering, not mystical intervention. While the idea of the Force guiding the Bad Batch's mutations is an intriguing theory, it lacks support from the established lore. Still, the question remains: why did the Bad Batch exist in the first place? If their mutations were part of a deliberate Kaminoan experiment, what purpose did they serve? And why did their presence coincide with one of the most tumultuous periods in galactic history? These questions invite speculation, and it's here that the Force may play a subtler role. Even if the Kaminoans were unaware, could the Force have subtly guided their hands, ensuring that a group of clones capable of resisting Order 66 would emerge at the right time? This idea aligns with the Force's tendency to influence events indirectly, weaving the threads of destiny in ways that often go unnoticed. The Bad Batch's resistance to Order 66, partial as it was, also raises larger questions about the nature of free will among the clones. For most, the inhibitor chips removed any possibility of choice, transforming them into instruments of Palpatine's will. But the Bad Batch, through a combination of genetic factors and individual traits, retained some level of autonomy. This autonomy allowed them to question their orders, make their own decisions, and ultimately chart a course independent of the Empire. Their story is a testament to the complexity of identity and agency in a system designed for conformity. It's also worth considering the role of camaraderie and individuality within the Bad Batch. Unlike the standard clone legions, who were trained to function as a collective unit, the Bad Batch operated more like a family. Their bonds with one another were deeply personal, shaped by their shared experiences and mutual respect for each other's strengths. This individuality may have further insulated them from the chip's control, giving them the strength to resist even when the odds were stacked against them. The parallels between the Bad Batch and other clones who resisted Order 66, such as Rex and Fives, are also worth noting. Rex's resistance, while ultimately successful, came only after his chip was surgically removed following Fives' warnings. This distinguishes him from the Bad Batch, whose resistance was more a result of their genetic differences than conscious effort or external intervention. However, their stories share a common thread: the struggle to maintain individuality and autonomy in the face of overwhelming control. Ultimately, the Bad Batch's story is one of defiance, not just against the orders of their creators, but against the very concept of being controlled. Their existence challenges the idea that the clones were merely tools of the Republic, showing that even in a system designed for obedience, individuality can emerge. Whether their mutations were purely scientific or influenced by something greater, the Bad Batch stands as a reminder that even in the darkest times, there is hope. Their journey continues to captivate fans, inviting us to explore the deeper mysteries of their origins and their place in the galaxy. While the Force may not have directly shaped them, its influence can still be felt in the way they defy expectations, chart their own path, and ultimately become symbols of resilience and freedom. The Bad Batch reminds us that even in a galaxy consumed by war, there are those who stand apart, guided not by programming, but by something far more powerful, their own sense of purpose. The Zillo beast is one of the most enigmatic creatures introduced in Star Wars: The Clone Wars, a massive reptilian giant whose appearance raises as many questions as it answers. Its armored scales proved impervious to lightsabers, and its incredible strength made it a nightmare for Republic forces to handle. While its awe-inspiring attributes led to immediate intrigue, they also sparked a deeper mystery. Was this creature a natural product of evolution, or was its resilience and power the result of something more deliberate? Among the most intriguing theories is the idea that the Zillo beast was engineered by the Sith as a weapon against the Jedi. However, to examine this theory, we must first address the facts and the context provided by canon. Canonically, the Zillo beast is established as a native species of Malastare, a planet known for its pod racing and the unique culture of its Dug inhabitants. Once abundant, the Zillo beasts were driven to near extinction by the Dugs, who saw them as a threat to their civilization. Their immense size, durability, and destructive potential made them formidable adversaries in Malastare's history, and the Dugs eventually wiped out all but one of these legendary creatures, or so they believed. By the time of the Clone Wars, the Zillo beast was considered a myth, its existence relegated to Dug folklore. However, during a pivotal battle between the Republic and Separatist forces on Malastare, the deployment of a massive electroproton bomb inadvertently awakened a surviving Zillo beast, thrusting it back into the galaxy's awareness. This revelation that the Zillo beast was native to Malastare and not a product of Sith experimentation challenges the idea of the creature being artificially engineered. However, its incredible resilience to lightsabers, combined with its historical conflict with the Dugs, still leaves room for speculation about its role in galactic history. The Dugs' efforts to eradicate the Zillo beasts could be viewed as an early example of civilization attempting to counteract a naturally occurring superweapon. If the Zillo beasts were indeed natural creatures, it's possible their unique biology inspired legends and myths that influenced Sith alchemy and experimentation. The Sith's obsession with creating weapons to counter the Jedi could have been informed by the existence of such creatures, rather than directly resulting in their creation. The theory that the Zillo beast was an ancient Sith weapon gains traction when considering its lightsaber-resistant hide. For Jedi, lightsabers were not just tools, they were extensions of their connection to the Force, symbols of their identity and power. A creature capable of withstanding these weapons would have posed an existential threat to the Jedi Order, forcing them to confront a foe immune to their most trusted advantage. In this light, the Zillo beast's biological traits align with what the Sith might strive to create through dark side alchemy, a living entity capable of nullifying the Jedi's primary means of defense and offense. However, canon complicates this theory. The Zillo beast's abilities are consistently portrayed as biological rather than mystical, and while its impervious scales and incredible strength are extraordinary, they do not explicitly interact with the Force in any way. Unlike other Sith-created monstrosities such as the Terentatek, creatures explicitly designed to hunt and kill Jedi by resisting Force abilities, the Zillo beast does not demonstrate any overt connection to Sith manipulation. Its power seems to be the result of evolution, not the machinations of the dark side. The historical conflict between the Dugs and the Zillo beasts further supports this interpretation. The Dugs' aggressive efforts to exterminate the species suggest a natural predator-prey dynamic, rather than a conflict rooted in Sith interference. If the Zillo beasts had been created by the Sith, one would expect evidence of Sith involvement in Malasthar's history or artifacts that tied the species to the dark side. Instead, the Zillo beast appears to be a product of its environment, a creature whose biology allowed it to dominate its ecosystem until it came into contact with the Dugs. Still, the timing of the Zillo beast's reappearance during the Clone Wars raises interesting questions. Could the Force itself have played a role in unearthing this ancient being? The Force often works in mysterious ways, influencing events to maintain balance in the galaxy. The emergence of the Zillo beast during this chaotic period might not have been coincidental. Its reappearance forced both the Jedi and the Republic to confront their reliance on military solutions and their willingness to exploit living beings for war. Palpatine's fascination with the Zillo beast and his desire to weaponize its traits further underscores its symbolic importance. While not a direct creation of the Sith, the Zillo beast's attributes could still represent a natural counterpart to the destructive ambitions of both Sith and Jedi alike. Palpatine's role in the Zillo beast arc is especially significant. Upon learning of the creature's lightsaber-resistant hide, he immediately orders it transported to Coruscant for study, envisioning it as a potential resource for future armor or weaponry. This decision highlights the Zillo beast's unique value in the broader context of galactic warfare. Palpatine's actions also raise the unsettling ethical dilemma of exploiting living creatures for technological advancement, a recurring theme in the Clone Wars series. In this sense, the Zillo beast story becomes a mirror for the Republic's descent into moral compromise under Palpatine's influence. The tragedy of the Zillo beast lies in its treatment as a tool rather than a living being. Awakened from its slumber by the Republic's weapons of war, it was captured, studied, and ultimately killed, all because of its unique biological traits. Whether it was a product of natural evolution or Sith experimentation, the Zillo beast became a victim of the galaxy's endless cycle of conflict. Its death serves as a reminder of the cost of war, not just in lives lost, but in the destruction of unique and irreplaceable creatures. While the Zillo beast was canonically a natural creature, its traits fit seamlessly into the larger themes of Star Wars. It represents the intersection of nature and conflict, a being whose existence challenges the galaxy's understanding of power, control, and survival. Its scales, impervious to lightsabers, may not have been the result of Sith engineering, but they evoke the kind of opposition that the Jedi and Sith have battled for millennia. In this way, the Zillo beast becomes a symbolic link between the ancient struggles of the Jedi and Sith and the modern war consuming the galaxy. The theory that the Zillo beast was a Sith creation may not hold up to canon scrutiny, but it offers a fascinating lens through which to view the creature's role in the Star Wars universe. Whether natural or engineered, its existence serves as a reminder of the galaxy's untamed mysteries and the ways in which those mysteries can be exploited by those in power. The Zillo beast stands as both a relic of Malasthar's past and a harbinger of the ethical dilemmas that will define the Republic's future. The Republic's clone army, a remarkable achievement in genetic engineering and military organization, was central to the Clone Wars narrative. Known for their precision, loyalty, and effectiveness, the clones were modeled after the genetic template of Jango Fett, a renowned bounty hunter who embodied the qualities of an elite warrior. While some theories suggest the clones were modeled after an ancient Mandalorian army, the reality is rooted more in the manipulations of Darth Sidious and his proxies rather than a deliberate homage to Mandalorian traditions. To understand this connection and debunk misconceptions, it's vital to explore the true origins of the clone army and the nuanced role Jango Fett played in its creation. Jango Fett was chosen as the template for the clone army not by the Kaminoans, but by Count Dooku, operating under the Sith pseudonym Darth Tyrannus. The Kaminoans were master geneticists, responsible for the technical aspects of creating the clones, but they were not the ones who decided on Jango's involvement. That decision came from the Sith, with Palpatine orchestrating the army's creation as part of his grand plan to execute Order 66 and eliminate the Jedi. The Kaminoans, focused on fulfilling their commission, had little concern for the broader political or historical implications of the clones' origins. Jango Fett's status as a Mandalorian is another layer of complexity. While he wore Mandalorian armor and demonstrated the skills of a Mandalorian warrior, his ties to the Mandalorian culture were disputed. The new Mandalorian government, led by Duchess Satine during the Clone Wars era, publicly disavowed him, claiming he was not a true Mandalorian. Whether this was a political maneuver or a reflection of deeper cultural divisions remains unclear, but it complicates any direct link between Jango Fett's identity and the Republic's clone army. What is certain is that Jango's prowess as a bounty hunter made him an ideal candidate for the Kaminoans' genetic experiments. His physical abilities, tactical acumen, and resilience were all qualities that could be passed on to an army of clones. But the notion that the Kaminoans used ancient records of Mandalorian training or warfare to shape the clones lacks canonical evidence. The Kaminoans' focus was on genetic engineering and behavioral conditioning, creating soldiers who would follow orders without question while excelling in combat. This emphasis on obedience and skill development was practical, not cultural. The clones' effectiveness against the Jedi, particularly during Order 66, was not primarily due to any Mandalorian influence. The inhibitor chips implanted in their brains were the decisive factor, overriding their free will and compelling them to carry out the command to eliminate the Jedi. This betrayal was made possible by the Jedi's trust in their clone troops, forged through years of camaraderie and shared battles. While the clones' skills and discipline played a role in the execution of Order 66, it was the chips and Palpatine's manipulations that ensured their devastating success. Despite these corrections, Jango Fett's Mandalorian connections and the echoes of Mandalorian traits in the clones cannot be entirely dismissed. The Kaminoans relied on Jango not only for his genetics, but also for his expertise. Part of Jango's agreement with the Kaminoans included training a select group of clones, ensuring that his combat techniques and methods were directly passed down. This mentorship created an indirect link between Jango's Mandalorian-style combat skills and the clones, though it was far more limited than some theories suggest. The clones' armor is another area where Mandalorian influence is often noted. While the design is not identical to traditional Mandalorian armor, its practicality, segmented plating, and T-shaped visors evoke comparisons. However, this similarity is more likely coincidental or an aesthetic choice rather than a deliberate attempt to mimic Mandalorian design. The armor was created by the Kaminoans to suit the clones' needs and the Republic's requirements, with functionality prioritized over heritage. The story of the clone army is inseparable from Palpatine's ultimate plan. Its creation was less about honoring any warrior tradition and more about orchestrating the downfall of the Jedi. Palpatine, operating in the shadows as Darth Sidious, used multiple proxies including Sifo-Dyas and Dooku to commission the army, ensuring that no single party knew the full extent of his plan. The Kaminoans, focused on fulfilling their role as engineers, were largely unaware of the army's true purpose. For them, the project was a technical challenge, an opportunity to refine their cloning techniques and deliver a product that met the Republic's specifications. Despite the lack of a direct connection to ancient Mandalorian armies, the theory persists because it captures the imagination and fits with broader themes in Star Wars. The Mandalorians' legacy as elite warriors, their history of conflict with the Jedi, and their enduring influence in the galaxy all make them a compelling parallel to the clones. While the clones were not explicitly modeled after Mandalorian forces, their shared traits, discipline, loyalty, and combat effectiveness create a sense of continuity between these two groups of warriors. This parallel is also a reminder of the tragedy at the heart of the clone army's story. The clones were bred for war, their individuality suppressed by genetic programming and behavioral conditioning. Yet, as the Clone Wars progressed, many clones developed distinct personalities and forged meaningful relationships with their Jedi generals. These bonds made the betrayal of Order 66 all the more devastating. The clones, despite their loyalty and sacrifice, were tools in a larger scheme, manipulated from the moment of their creation. Jango Fett's role in the creation of the clone army is similarly complex. As a bounty hunter, he operated on the fringes of galactic politics, yet his involvement had far-reaching consequences. His decision to accept Dooku's offer, motivated by personal gain and the promise of an unaltered clone, his son, Boba, set in motion events that would reshape the galaxy. Whether or not Jango considered the implications of his actions is unclear, but his legacy is deeply tied to the clones who bore his face and fought under the Republic's banner. The theory that the clone army was modeled after an ancient Mandalorian force ultimately reflects the enduring fascination with Mandalorian culture and its influence on the galaxy. While the Kaminoans' work was grounded in science and manipulation, rather than history or tradition, the echoes of Mandalorian traits in the clones, whether through Jango's training or their own evolution, add depth to their story. The clones were not just soldiers, they were symbols of loyalty, resilience, and the cost of war. In the end, the true story of the clone army is one of power, deception, and loss. It is a testament to the manipulations of the Sith, the skill of the Kaminoans, and the sacrifices of the clones themselves. While their origins may not be tied to ancient Mandalorian armies, their legacy is one of strength and tragedy, a reflection of the galaxy's unending struggle between light and dark. Jango Fett's influence, however indirect, ensured that the Republic's army was more than just a tool of war. It was a force to be reckoned with, for better or worse. The clones of the Grand Army of the Republic are some of the most complex and tragic figures in Star Wars. Bred for loyalty, programmed for obedience, and conditioned to follow orders, their role in the execution of Order 66 marked one of the darkest moments in the galaxy's history. While the inhibitor chips implanted in their brains effectively removed free will during this command, the story is more nuanced than complete mind control. Though most clones complied, Cases like those of Fives, Rex, Gregor, and Wolf reveal a subtle interplay between programming, loyalty, and individuality, making their story both tragic and fascinating. To understand the clones' actions during Order 66, we must start with the inhibitor chips themselves. Implanted during the early stages of their development on Kamino, these chips were designed to suppress autonomy and ensure obedience to critical commands. Their primary function was to execute Order 66, a directive issued by Palpatine that branded the Jedi as traitors to the Republic. When activated, the chips compelled the clones to turn on their Jedi commanders, overriding personal loyalty and relationships. The chips were specifically engineered to target the clones' perception of the Jedi, leaving other decision-making capabilities intact. This allowed clones to maintain their tactical effectiveness while ruthlessly carrying out the directive. The effectiveness of the inhibitor chips is illustrated in the overwhelming compliance of the clones. For most, the programming was absolute. Long-standing bonds with Jedi generals, forged through years of camaraderie and shared battles, were erased in an instant. The Jedi's trust in their clone troops, a cornerstone of their wartime strategy, became their greatest vulnerability. The clones acted with precision and efficiency, ensuring the near-total eradication of the Jedi Order. However, the chips were not flawless. ARC Trooper Fives was among the first to uncover their true purpose, thanks to the tragic case of Tup, whose malfunctioning chip led him to kill Jedi Master Tiplar during the Battle of Ringo Vinda. Tup's inexplicable actions set Fives on a path of investigation, one that ultimately revealed the chip's insidious design. Fives' discovery was groundbreaking, but his warnings were dismissed as paranoia. Deemed a threat to the Republic, Fives was killed before he could expose the truth. His sacrifice, however, planted the seeds of doubt in those closest to him and laid the groundwork for future resistance. Captain Rex's experience during Order 66 is one of the most poignant examples of a clone grappling with the effects of the inhibitor chips. When the command was issued, Rex initially succumbed, turning his blasters on Ahsoka Tano, his trusted ally and friend. Yet, something within him resisted. Canon establishes that it was Ahsoka's presence, her deep connection to the Force, that helped Rex momentarily break through the chip's control. Even as he fought against the programming, he struggled to verbalize what was happening, warning Ahsoka to find Fives before the chip reasserted control. With Ahsoka's help, Rex's chip was surgically removed, freeing him from its influence. His resistance was not purely a matter of willpower, but a combination of his bond with Ahsoka, her use of the Force, and his own capacity for individuality. Other clones like Gregor and Wolf also managed to remove their inhibitor chips before Order 66. These cases further highlight the potential for resistance under the right circumstances. Gregor, known for his exceptional skills and independent streak, survived long enough to join forces with Rex and Wolf in their post-war lives. Together, they represent a small but significant group of clones who were able to break free from the control imposed by the chips. Their stories are a testament to the individuality that persisted within the ranks of the clone army, despite the Kaminoans' efforts to suppress it. The role of loyalty in the clones' actions during Order 66 is another critical factor. The inhibitor chips created a compulsion that was difficult, if not impossible, to resist. But the clones' sense of duty and trust in the chain of command also played a role in their compliance. Palpatine's authority as Supreme Chancellor lent legitimacy to the Order, making it easier for the clones to accept the narrative of Jedi treachery. For many, following orders was not just a matter of programming, but a deeply ingrained sense of purpose. This duality adds a layer of tragedy to their actions. Though they were compelled by the chips, their loyalty to the Republic was also weaponized against them. Fear and uncertainty also contributed to the clones' actions. The chaos of the Clone Wars had already placed immense psychological pressure on them, leaving many reliant on the structure provided by their commanders. When Order 66 was issued, the sudden shift in the Jedi's status and the overwhelming authority of the command created an environment where questioning orders felt impossible. The clones' conditioning to trust and obey made resistance all the more unlikely. Despite these challenges, the examples of Fives, Rex, Gregor, and Wolf demonstrate that the clones were not entirely without agency. The inhibitor chips were powerful, but they did not erase individuality completely. Fives' relentless pursuit of the truth, Rex's moment of resistance, and the decisions of others to remove their chips reflect a capacity for critical thinking and self-awareness. These moments, though rare, highlight the complexity of the clones' experiences. The tragedy of the clones is compounded by the fact that they were victims of a system designed to dehumanize them. Bred for war and denied the opportunity to choose their own paths, they were pawns in a game they didn't fully understand. The inhibitor chips were the ultimate betrayal, stripping them of their autonomy and forcing them to carry out atrocities against those they once fought alongside. Yet their actions during and after Order 66 reveal an enduring humanity, one that persisted even in the face of overwhelming control. In the aftermath of Order 66, the fate of the clones diverged. Many continued to serve the newly formed Galactic Empire, their loyalty redirected toward a regime that saw them as expendable. Others, like Rex, chose to forge their own paths, seeking a life beyond the battlefield. This divergence underscores the enduring impact of individuality within the clone ranks. Despite their shared origins and conditioning, the clones were capable of forging their own identities, even in a galaxy that sought to deny them that right. Fives' legacy is perhaps the most poignant aspect of this story. Though his warnings went unheeded during his lifetime, his actions paved the way for later revelations about the inhibitor chips. For Rex and others who survived, Fives' sacrifice became a source of strength, a reminder of the importance of questioning authority and fighting for what is right. His story is a testament to the resilience of the clones and their capacity for resistance, even in the darkest of times. Ultimately, the story of the clones is one of complexity and tragedy. While the inhibitor chips stripped many of their agency, they did not erase the individuality that defined them. The cases of Fives, Rex, Gregor, and Wolf reveal a capacity for defiance, a spark of humanity that persisted despite the odds. Their actions remind us that even in the face of overwhelming control, the choice to resist remains a choice that defines not just a soldier, but a person. In the end, the clones were not just tools of war. They were individuals, each with their own story, struggles, and legacy. Captain Rex, one of the Republic's most distinguished clones, stood shoulder to shoulder with Anakin Skywalker during countless campaigns throughout the Clone Wars. Their partnership was built on mutual respect, trust, and a shared commitment to their mission. Yet, for all the time Rex spent under Anakin's command, the question arises: How much did he truly understand about the Jedi General's internal struggles? While Rex may not have been privy to Anakin's darkest moments or his private battles with the dark side, there are subtle hints in canon that suggest Rex observed behavior that occasionally strayed from the ideals of the Jedi Order. However, Rex's perspective was shaped by his role as a soldier and his respect for the chain of command, which limited his ability to act on such observations. Anakin Skywalker was a unique figure among the Jedi. Charismatic, daring, and deeply human in his emotions, he stood apart from his more stoic peers. For the clones under his command, these traits made him an inspiring leader. Unlike many Jedi who maintained a strict emotional detachment, Anakin forged bonds with his troops, treating them as individuals rather than expendable assets. Rex, as one of Anakin's closest subordinates, benefited from this camaraderie, which fostered immense loyalty and trust. Yet, this same emotional intensity often manifested in ways that hinted at the darker impulses simmering beneath Anakin's surface. The Clone Wars were a relentless and grueling conflict, pushing even the most disciplined individuals to their limits. For Anakin, this often meant resorting to unorthodox and aggressive tactics. Rex, as a highly perceptive leader, would have noticed Anakin's tendency to push boundaries and take risks that bordered on recklessness. On the battlefield, these traits were often viewed as strengths, turning impossible situations into victories. But there were moments when Anakin's actions likely gave Rex pause. Anakin's fierce determination, while inspiring, sometimes escalated into unchecked anger, especially when his comrades were threatened or when civilian casualties occurred. These flashes of intensity may not have revealed the full extent of Anakin's struggle with the dark side, but they painted a picture of a leader who carried a heavy burden. However, it is important to recognize the limitations of Rex's perspective. Much of Anakin's descent into darkness occurred in private, away from his clone troops and even his closest Jedi allies. His secret marriage to Padme Amidala, his growing distrust of the Jedi Council, and his personal grief and fears were not matters he openly shared. For Rex, who primarily interacted with Anakin in military contexts, these deeper struggles would have been obscured. What Rex did witness were the outward manifestations of Anakin's turmoil, his intensity in battle, his occasional defiance of orders, and his unwavering determination to protect those he cared about, sometimes at great cost. Rex's relationship with Anakin was also shaped by the military hierarchy and the conditioning instilled in the clones. As a clone trooper, Rex was bred to follow orders and respect the authority of the Jedi. Questioning a Jedi's behavior, particularly a commander as successful as Anakin, would have been nearly unthinkable. The structure of their relationship meant that Rex's role was to execute Anakin's strategies, not to critique them. Even if Rex had harbored doubts about certain decisions or actions, his position as a soldier likely kept those thoughts unspoken. The bond between Rex and Anakin was further complicated by the presence of Ahsoka Tano, Anakin's Padawan. Ahsoka's relationship with both Anakin and Rex created a dynamic where Rex's loyalty was often split. Ahsoka's departure from the Jedi Order was a defining moment for all three characters, with Rex observing the profound impact it had on Anakin. While Anakin outwardly supported Ahsoka's decision, the emotional toll was evident. Rex, who shared a close friendship with Ahsoka, likely understood better than most how deeply Anakin was affected. This moment highlighted Anakin's capacity for intense emotional connections that often made him vulnerable to anger and frustration. Rex's loyalty to Ahsoka became even more prominent during the events surrounding Order 66. When the inhibitor chips activated and clones across the galaxy turned against their Jedi commanders, Rex initially succumbed to the programming. However, Ahsoka's intervention and her connection to the Force helped him briefly resist long enough for the chip to be removed. This act of defiance solidified Rex's loyalty to Ahsoka and set him on a path that distanced him from Anakin, who by then had fully embraced his identity as Darth Vader. While Rex was likely unaware of Anakin's transformation during these events, his bond with Ahsoka became the guiding force in his life, eclipsing his earlier relationship with Anakin. One of the most poignant aspects of Rex's story is the possibility that, in hindsight, he may have reflected on the signs he missed during his time with Anakin. While there is no canonical evidence to suggest Rex ever learned of Anakin's fate as Darth Vader, his experiences during the Clone Wars and his understanding of the Jedi's downfall would have given him much to ponder. The trust and camaraderie he shared with Anakin made the betrayal of Order 66 all the more devastating, even if Rex did not know the full scope of Anakin's role in the rise of the Empire. Rex's perceptiveness and leadership were central to his character, but his ability to recognize Anakin's darker tendencies was inherently limited by the circumstances of their relationship. Much of what Anakin struggled with was hidden beneath the surface, shielded by his status as a Jedi and the demands of the war. Rex's perspective, shaped by loyalty, respect, and the rigid structure of the Republic's military, meant that his observations of Anakin were filtered through a lens of admiration and duty. In the end, Rex's story is less about his awareness of Anakin's fall and more about his resilience in the face of betrayal and loss. His journey reflects the complexities of loyalty and the challenges of navigating relationships in a galaxy at war. While he may not have fully grasped the extent of Anakin's descent into darkness, Rex's experiences alongside Anakin and Ahsoka shaped him into one of the most enduring and beloved characters in the Star Wars saga. His ability to adapt, to question, and ultimately to choose his own path set him apart not just as a clone, but as an individual. The relationship between Rex and Anakin, though primarily defined by military contexts, is a testament to the bonds forged during the Clone Wars. It reminds us that even in the face of conflict and tragedy, there are moments of trust, respect, and humanity that endure. While Rex may not have seen the full picture of Anakin's struggle, his story remains an integral part of the greater narrative, reflecting the complexities of war, loyalty, and the choices that define us. Count Dooku, or Darth Tyrannus, is one of the most fascinating characters in Star Wars. A Jedi turned Sith Lord, he operated in the shadows of the galaxy as both the leader of the Separatists and a pawn in Darth Sidious's grand scheme. Yet, a theory persists that Dooku may have harbored his own ambitions to overthrow Sidious and end the Sith, reshaping the galaxy to align with his vision of order. While canon paints a picture of Dooku as loyal to Sidious's plans, his actions and philosophy hint at deeper complexities. Dooku's story is one of power, manipulation, and ultimately tragic resignation elements that make this theory both plausible and captivating. To begin unraveling this theory, it's essential to examine Dooku's motivations. Unlike many Sith, Dooku's fall to the dark side wasn't born of pure ambition or hatred. His disillusionment with the Jedi Order and the Republic's corruption played a significant role in his decision to leave the Jedi. As a former Jedi Master, Dooku grew increasingly frustrated with the Order's inability to address the galaxy's systemic issues. This dissatisfaction, coupled with the death of his former apprentice Qui-Gon Jinn, created a perfect storm that ultimately led him into Sidious's orbit. Sidious offered Dooku the power to enact his vision of galactic order, a vision rooted in his belief that strong, centralized control was necessary to eliminate chaos and corruption. Dooku's relationship with Qui-Gon Jinn is a critical factor in understanding his character. Qui-Gon was known for his unorthodox views and willingness to challenge the Jedi Council, traits that Dooku both admired and encouraged during their time as master and apprentice. Qui-Gon's death at the hands of Darth Maul deeply affected Dooku, solidifying his belief that the Jedi Order was failing to protect the galaxy. This loss likely influenced Dooku's decision to join Sidious, as he may have seen the Sith as a means to achieve the justice and stability the Jedi could not provide. However, this connection to Qui-Gon also highlights the potential limits of Dooku's allegiance to the Sith. While he embraced the dark side, his ultimate goal was not destruction for its own sake, but the creation of a galaxy free from the flaws he perceived in the Republic and the Jedi. Sidious's manipulation of Dooku was masterful. From the outset, Sidious maintained tight control over his apprentice, using Dooku as a tool to further his grand plan, while ensuring that Dooku could never truly rival him. The separatist movement, which Dooku publicly led, was little more than a front for Sidious's scheme to consolidate power. While Dooku may have genuinely believed in the separatist cause, his role was always that of a figurehead, orchestrating chaos to weaken the Republic and pave the way for Sidious's rise. Sidious's control over the war effort left little room for Dooku to exercise true autonomy, and any moves Dooku made to consolidate power were ultimately in service of Sidious's larger strategy. This dynamic raises the question of whether Dooku ever intended to challenge Sidious. The rule of two, a cornerstone of Sith philosophy, dictates that the apprentice must eventually overthrow the master. In this sense, betrayal is not only expected, but necessary for the Sith's survival. For Dooku, this doctrine would have been both a temptation and a trap. While the ambition to supplant Sidious may have existed, Dooku was acutely aware of his master's power and cunning. Sidious's ability to manipulate events, foresee threats, and maintain control over the galaxy left little opportunity for Dooku to act against him. Furthermore, Dooku lacked the forces and allies needed to mount a credible challenge. The separatist military, though formidable, was built on droid armies and corporate alliances, assets that Sidious could easily discard once they outlived their usefulness. Dooku's relationship with Asajj Ventress offers a glimpse into his potential plans for independence. Ventress, a dark side assassin trained by Dooku, was a clear violation of the rule of two. While Sidious tolerated Ventress's existence for a time, her growing power eventually led him to demand her elimination. Dooku's decision to abandon Ventress underlines the limits of his autonomy. Even his attempts to cultivate an apprentice were ultimately subject to Sidious's will. However, Ventress's training suggests that Dooku may have been laying the groundwork for a future rebellion. By fostering her abilities, Dooku could have been preparing an ally to help him challenge Sidious, an effort that was cut short by his master's intervention. Dooku's resignation to his fate is perhaps most evident in his final moments. During his duel with Anakin Skywalker aboard the Invisible Hand in Revenge of the Sith, Dooku fights with skill and determination, but his defeat is inevitable. When Sidious orders Anakin to kill Dooku, the former Jedi does not react with sadness or anger. Instead, he appears a mix of shocked and resigned, as though he realizes too late that he has been outmaneuvered. This resignation suggests that Dooku may have harbored doubts about his ability to fulfill the Sith's doctrine of betrayal. While he likely understood the precarious nature of his position, he underestimated Sidious's willingness to discard him in favor of a younger, more powerful apprentice. The theory that Dooku planned to betray Sidious and end the Sith is bolstered by his ideological differences with his master. While both men sought power, their visions for the galaxy diverged significantly. Dooku's aristocratic demeanor and calculated approach to leadership were at odds with Sidious's ruthless ambition and reliance on fear. Dooku sought to replace the Republic with a more efficient and just system, one that reflected his ideals of order and control. Sidious, on the other hand, envisioned an empire ruled by absolute tyranny, with the dark side as its foundation. This fundamental incompatibility suggests that Dooku never intended to serve Sidious indefinitely. Instead, he may have seen their alliance as a temporary arrangement, one that would allow him to amass power before ultimately asserting his own vision. In the end, Dooku's plans, whatever they may have been, were thwarted by the very system he sought to navigate. Sidious's manipulation, the limitations of the separatist movement, and the arrival of Anakin Skywalker as the Chosen One all conspired to seal Dooku's fate. Whether he truly intended to betray Sidious or merely harbored unspoken ambitions, Dooku's story serves as a cautionary tale about the perils of power and the seductive nature of the dark side. Dooku's legacy is one of tragedy and complexity. His fall to the dark side was driven by a desire to reshape the galaxy, yet his actions ultimately led to greater chaos and suffering. His relationship with Sidious highlights the fragility of Sith alliances, where trust is an illusion and betrayal is inevitable. At the same time, Dooku's character offers a glimpse into the philosophical tensions within the Sith Order, a reminder that even among the darkest figures, there are shades of nuance and humanity. The theory that Dooku planned to betray Sidious and end the Sith adds depth to his character, transforming him from a mere pawn in Sidious's game to a figure of ambition and complexity. While the full extent of his intentions remains speculative, the clues left behind in his actions, relationships, and ideology paint a picture of a man torn between his ideals and the reality of his choices. In the end, Dooku's story is a reminder that even the most powerful figures can be undone by their ambitions, their alliances, and their failures to see the bigger picture. General Pong Krell, one of the most notorious figures in the history of the Clone Wars, is remembered for his brutal tactics and callous disregard for the lives of the soldiers under his command. His betrayal during the Battle of Umbara was a turning point for the clones, forcing them to confront the fragility of their trust in the Jedi. Yet, Krell's motivations remain a source of speculation. While he openly declared his intent to join Count Dooku and the Separatists, some fans have theorized that his actions on Umbara were part of a darker, more methodical plan, an experiment to study the effects of fratricidal conflict on clones and its potential implications for the Force. While this theory adds an intriguing dimension to Krell's character, it must be examined carefully in light of what is established in canon. Krell's stated goal was clear. During his confrontation with the clones, He revealed that he had foreseen the fall of the Republic and believed that the Separatists, under Dooku's leadership, would emerge victorious. His ambition to align with Dooku was not just rhetoric. He saw the Sith as a rising power and sought to position himself on the winning side. This explicit declaration undercuts the theory that Krell's actions were solely about Force experimentation. However, it does not entirely dismiss the idea that Krell's methods on Umbara were influenced by more than simple betrayal. His behavior on the battlefield, particularly his emphasis on making clones fight each other, suggests a deeper, albeit twisted, agenda. One of Krell's defining traits was his disdain for clones. He frequently expressed his belief that they were inferior beings, little more than tools bred for war. This prejudice shaped his command style, which was marked by a blatant disregard for their lives. Under Krell's leadership, the clones were subjected to relentless and often suicidal orders, culminating in a scenario where they unknowingly turned their weapons on their own brothers. This act of forced fratricide was a defining moment in the Umbara campaign and is central to the theory that Krell was conducting a psychological experiment. By pitting the clones against each other, Krell shattered their sense of unity and loyalty, creating a level of emotional trauma that went beyond the typical horrors of war. However, the theory that Krell believed the clones had a unique connection through the Force is not supported by canon. While the clones shared a genetic bond due to their creation from Jango Fett's DNA, there is no evidence to suggest they were tied to the Force in a significant way. Krell's actions were more likely rooted in his prejudice and his willingness to exploit the clones' sense of duty and trust. For Krell, the clones were expendable, and their suffering was a byproduct of his ruthless ambition rather than a deliberate attempt to manipulate the Force. The setting of Umbara itself does lend some weight to the theory. The planet's unusual darkness and hostile environment created a unique psychological and tactical challenge for the clones. Its eerie atmosphere and the almost palpable tension of the campaign could be interpreted as amplifying the emotional strain on the soldiers. While this environment may have been ideal for a Force-sensitive individual to study emotional or spiritual disturbances, there is no evidence in canon to suggest Krell was deliberately leveraging Umbara's properties for such an experiment. Instead, his focus appeared to be on breaking the clones' spirits to assert his dominance and fulfill his tactical objectives. Krell's tactical decisions during the campaign further complicate this theory. His leadership was marked by chaos and inefficiency, often leading to unnecessary casualties and compromised operations. For a Jedi Master, even a fallen one, such poor decision-making raises questions about his true objectives. While some of his actions might align with the theory of creating trauma to study its effects, they also suggest a lack of foresight and control. Krell's focus on sowing discord among the clones may have been less about experimentation and more about his disdain for them as individuals. The claim that Krell's physical form gave him unique Force abilities is also not supported by canon. While his 4 arms allowed him to wield 2 double-bladed lightsabers with unmatched ferocity, this trait was purely physical and did not enhance his connection to the Force. Krell's mastery of combat and his ability to intimidate his opponents were the results of his skills and training, not any special connection tied to his physiology. His actions on Umbara, therefore, cannot be attributed to unique Force abilities, but rather to his cunning, brutality, and willingness to exploit his position. Krell's capture and subsequent behavior provide additional context for his motivations. When the clones ultimately rebelled against his leadership and detained him, Krell's response was not one of calm resignation. Instead, he reacted with anger and contempt, lashing out verbally and dismissing the clones as unworthy beings incapable of understanding his vision. His behavior in captivity underscores his arrogance and his inability to see the clones as anything other than tools. This response further diminishes the idea that Krell's actions were part of a grand experiment. Rather, they reflect a combination of hubris, prejudice, and desperation. Ultimately, Krell's story ends in betrayal not just of the clones, but of himself. Dogma, a clone who had struggled with the moral implications of following Krell's orders, ultimately executed him. This moment was a poignant culmination of Krell's cruelty and the clones' resilience. Dogma's decision to kill Krell was not only an act of justice, but also a reclamation of agency for the clones, who had endured so much under Krell's command. While the theory that Krell was conducting a Force experiment on clone trauma is an intriguing interpretation of his actions, it is not fully supported by the events of the Clone Wars. Krell's stated allegiance to Dooku, his overt prejudice against clones, and his tactical incompetence all point to a character driven by ambition and disdain, rather than a calculated plan to manipulate the Force. His actions on Umbara were undoubtedly methodical in their cruelty, but they were more likely a means of asserting his power and breaking the clone's spirits than a deliberate attempt to study the Force. That said, Krell's role in the Umbara arc remains one of the most impactful and haunting stories in the Clone Wars. His betrayal forced the clones to confront the darker realities of their relationship with the Jedi, forever altering their understanding of loyalty and leadership. Krell's actions, whether viewed as methodical experimentation or wanton cruelty, leave behind a legacy of pain and resilience. The clones who survived his command emerged stronger, their bonds forged in the fires of betrayal and conflict. In the end, Pong Krell stands as a cautionary tale of what happens when power and arrogance are unchecked by compassion. His fall from the Jedi Order and his actions on Umbara reflect the broader tragedy of the Clone Wars, a conflict that corrupted not only the Republic, but also those sworn to protect it. Whether his motives were calculated or chaotic, Krell's story reminds us of the dangers of seeing others as expendable and the strength that comes from reclaiming one's humanity in the face of oppression. Ahsoka Tano's journey from a young Padawan to a formidable Force wielder is one of the most compelling arcs in Star Wars: The Clone Wars. Her growth, independence, and role in shaping pivotal events have led to many fan theories, including the idea that she was secretly meant to replace Anakin Skywalker as the Chosen One. While intriguing, this theory is not directly supported by canonical evidence and must be carefully examined in light of what we know about Ahsoka, Anakin, and the Chosen One prophecy. The prophecy of the Chosen One, central to Star Wars mythology, foretells of a being who would bring balance to the Force by destroying the Sith. Anakin Skywalker, with his miraculous virgin birth and unparalleled connection to the Force, was explicitly identified as this figure. George Lucas himself has confirmed that Anakin was always intended to fulfill this role, even after his fall to the dark side as Darth Vader. By destroying both himself and Emperor Palpatine at the end of Return of the Jedi, Anakin ultimately brought balance to the Force, completing the prophecy. This definitive narrative leaves little room for the idea that Ahsoka was a secret replacement for Anakin in this role. However, Ahsoka's story does intersect with the themes of the prophecy in meaningful ways. While she was never explicitly positioned as the Chosen One, her presence in Anakin's life and her independent path after leaving the Jedi Order suggest that she was an important counterbalance to his struggles with the dark side. Ahsoka's character and choices embody an alternative approach to the Force, one that could have inspired Anakin to fulfill the prophecy in a way that avoided his fall. Ahsoka's introduction as Anakin's apprentice during the Clone Wars served multiple purposes. She was not only a student, but also a mirror for Anakin, reflecting both his strengths and his weaknesses. Her growth under Anakin's tutelage highlighted his unorthodox but effective teaching methods, while her moral compass and independence often tempered his impulsiveness. However, while Ahsoka was undeniably talented, the claim that her abilities surpassed her peers is not explicitly supported in canon. Her skills were formidable, but they were a testament to her dedication and training, not an indication of her being a destined replacement for Anakin. The turning point in Ahsoka's journey came during her wrongful trial for treason, a moment that tested her loyalty to the Jedi Order and her own principles. The trial was less about Ahsoka challenging authority and more about her need to prove her innocence in the face of overwhelming betrayal. The Jedi Council's willingness to sacrifice her to preserve their reputation deeply affected her, leading to her decision to leave the Order. This departure, while painful, marked a significant evolution in Ahsoka's character. It freed her from the constraints of the Jedi Order's bureaucracy and allowed her to follow her own moral compass. However, it is important to note that Ahsoka continued to embody many Jedi principles even after her departure, including compassion, selflessness, and a commitment to justice. The theory that Ahsoka was meant to replace Anakin as the Chosen One often points to her independence and her ability to avoid the pitfalls that led to Anakin's fall. While Anakin struggled with attachment, fear, and the lure of the dark side, Ahsoka demonstrated a remarkable ability to balance her emotions and her duty. Her decision to leave the Jedi Order, while heartbreaking, showed a level of self-awareness and strength that Anakin often lacked. By walking away from the Order, Ahsoka rejected the rigidity and arrogance that contributed to its downfall, carving out a path that aligned more closely with the true spirit of the Force. Still, the idea that Ahsoka could have been a replacement for Anakin overlooks several key aspects of the Chosen One prophecy. Anakin's virgin birth, a direct intervention of the Force, marked him as unique among all Force-sensitive beings. This miraculous origin was central to the Jedi's belief in his destiny. Ahsoka, while extraordinary, did not have the same mystical connection to the prophecy. Additionally, there is no canonical evidence to suggest that the Force ever intended for Ahsoka to assume the mantle of the Chosen One. Instead, her role in the Clone Wars and beyond can be understood as complementary to Anakin's journey rather than a substitution for it. Ahsoka's later actions, particularly during her time as an independent Force wielder, further highlight her unique place in the galaxy's history. By stepping away from the Jedi Order, she avoided the limitations and mistakes that contributed to its collapse. Her role in aiding the rebellion, as seen in Star Wars Rebels, positioned her as a critical figure in the fight against the Empire. Ahsoka's confrontation with Darth Vader on Malachor was particularly significant, symbolizing the clash between what Anakin had become and what he could have been. In this moment, Ahsoka's hope and resilience shone through, even as she faced the painful reality of her former master's fall. The emotional and symbolic weight of Ahsoka's journey adds depth to the theory of her potential as an alternative Chosen One, but it does not change the established narrative. Anakin fulfilled the prophecy by destroying both himself and Palpatine, ending the Sith and bringing balance to the Force. Ahsoka's role was not to replace Anakin, but to offer a glimpse of what could have been a path of balance, independence, and unwavering commitment to the greater good. George Lucas's explicit statements about Anakin's role as the Chosen One further clarify this point. Lucas envisioned the prophecy as a central theme of the Skywalker saga, with Anakin's redemption and ultimate sacrifice serving as its culmination. Ahsoka's story, while deeply intertwined with Anakin's, was never intended to overshadow or redefine this narrative. Instead, her journey provides a parallel exploration of the Force's complexities and the choices that define its wielders. Ultimately, the theory that Ahsoka was secretly meant to replace Anakin as the Chosen One reflects the enduring fascination with her character and the themes of destiny and choice in Star Wars. While not supported by canon, the theory underscores the importance of Ahsoka's role in the broader narrative. Her presence in Anakin's life, her departure from the Jedi Order, and her actions during and after the Clone Wars highlight the ways in which the Force can act through unexpected individuals to shape the galaxy's fate. Ahsoka Tano's legacy is one of hope, resilience, and the power of choice. She represents the possibility of balance, not as a predestined figure, but as someone who chose to follow her own path and remain true to her principles. Her story is a testament to the enduring impact of individuals who challenge the status quo, question authority, and strive to do what is right, even in the face of overwhelming odds. The Jedi Purge, orchestrated through Order 66, was a devastating event that brought the Jedi Order to its knees, allowing the Sith to rise to dominance. The systematic betrayal of the Jedi by their own clone troopers under the influence of inhibitor chips was a carefully orchestrated move by Darth Sidious that the Jedi were ill-prepared to counter. However, some theorists propose that ancient Jedi may have foreseen aspects of this calamity in their prophecies and teachings. If true, the failure of the Jedi Council to heed these warnings, coupled with the dark side's ability to cloud the Force, would reveal a deeper layer of tragedy to their downfall. Prophecies and visions were long-standing elements of Jedi tradition, forming a bridge between their present actions and the potential futures they sought to navigate. Yet, while prophecies were often revered for their insights, they were also shrouded in mystery and ambiguity. This duality made them difficult to interpret, particularly in times of crisis. It is within this context that we must consider the theory that ancient Jedi foresaw the events that culminated in the Clone Wars and Order 66, not in precise detail, but through warnings of betrayal, darkness, and the collapse of the Jedi Order. One key aspect of this theory is the role of ancient Jedi temples as repositories of knowledge and Force-aligned wisdom. Sites like the Lothal Temple, Tython, and Ahch-To were constructed to preserve the teachings of the Jedi and their connection to the Force. While the Lothal Temple is canonically significant, particularly for its connection to the world between worlds and its depiction of cycles of light and dark, there is no evidence to suggest it contains specific warnings about Order 66. However, the temple and others like it often emphasized the importance of vigilance and the ever-present threat of the dark side. These general themes could have served as subtle warnings to future generations. Another layer to this theory lies in the Jedi's historical encounters with the Sith. Over millennia, the Sith rose and fell in cycles, often seeking to exploit the Jedi's weaknesses and blind spots. Ancient records stored in Jedi holocrons and temples may have outlined patterns of betrayal and conflict, serving as cautionary tales. These teachings likely warned of the dangers of complacency and the Sith's capacity for deception, lessons that became increasingly relevant during the Republic's twilight years. However, even if ancient Jedi foresaw elements of the Clone Wars and Order 66, their ability to act on these warnings was severely limited. The dark side, particularly under the influence of Darth Sidious, had begun to cloud the Jedi's connection to the Force well before the war began. This deliberate obfuscation was a critical component of Sidious's plan. By masking his presence and manipulating events from the shadows, he ensured that the Jedi were perpetually reacting to crises rather than anticipating them. This clouding effect is explicitly addressed in Star Wars canon, with Yoda and other members of the Jedi Council acknowledging their diminished ability to perceive the future. This impairment left them vulnerable, unable to discern the true nature of the war or the extent of the Sith's infiltration. The ancient warnings, even if available, would have been difficult to interpret clearly in such a compromised state. The combination of the dark side's interference and the Jedi's growing detachment from their spiritual roots created a perfect storm of vulnerability. Another significant factor was the accessibility of Jedi temples and other ancient sites by the time of the Clone Wars. Many of these locations had been lost, destroyed, or fallen into disuse over centuries of galactic upheaval. The Lothal Temple, for example, was hidden and accessible only to those attuned to the Force. This inaccessibility meant that much of the knowledge stored in these temples was beyond the reach of the Jedi Council. Without access to these repositories, the Jedi lacked the tools to fully understand or prepare for the challenges they faced. The Jedi's internal culture also played a role in their failure to heed prophetic warnings. By the time of the Clone Wars, the Jedi Order had become deeply entrenched in the politics of the Republic. Their role as peacekeepers had shifted toward militarization, and their focus on practical matters often overshadowed their spiritual and philosophical traditions. This detachment from their roots made them less likely to engage with the mystical aspects of their teachings, such as prophecies and ancient warnings. Even if these warnings were accessible, the Council's increasingly pragmatic approach may have led them to dismiss such insights as irrelevant or overly abstract. Palpatine's active role in concealing his plans further ensured the Jedi's inability to act. As both Supreme Chancellor and Sith Lord, he manipulated the war and the Jedi's involvement in it to his advantage. By fostering a climate of distrust and division, Palpatine exacerbated the Jedi's isolation. His mastery of the dark side allowed him to maintain his facade while orchestrating the galaxy's descent into chaos. The Jedi, blinded by the immediate demands of the war and the dark side's shroud, could not see the true threat until it was too late. Despite these challenges, there are moments in the Clone Wars that hint at the Jedi's awareness of an impending crisis. Yoda's journey to Moraband, the ancient homeworld of the Sith in the series' final season, offers a poignant example. During this journey, Yoda confronts visions of the future, including the fall of the Jedi and the rise of Darth Sidious. While these visions were fragmented and symbolic, they underscored the inevitability of the coming conflict. Yoda's inability to prevent these events reflects the limitations of prophecy itself. While it can offer glimpses of what may come, it cannot always provide the clarity needed to change the course of events. The theory that the Jedi Purge was foreseen by ancient Jedi adds a layer of complexity to the tragedy of Order 66. It suggests that the knowledge to prevent or mitigate the purge may have existed, but was inaccessible due to a combination of factors, including the dark side's influence, the Jedi's detachment from their roots, and the limitations of prophecy. This perspective reframes the purge as not just a failure of the Jedi in the present, but as a culmination of their long-standing vulnerabilities and oversights. Ultimately, the Jedi's downfall was the result of both external manipulation and internal shortcomings. The ancient Jedi may have left behind warnings of the dangers of complacency, betrayal, and the dark side's resurgence. But these warnings were drowned out by the noise of war and the shadow of the Sith. The Jedi's inability to bridge the gap between their spiritual wisdom and their political responsibilities left them ill-equipped to face the challenges of their time. The ruins on Lothal and other Jedi temples remain potent symbols of what the Jedi Order once was and what it could have been. These sites, steeped in the Force, represent the connection between the past, present, and future, a connection that the Jedi failed to fully embrace during the Clone Wars. Their loss serves as a reminder of the importance of balance, humility, and the enduring need to learn from the past. In the end, the tragedy of the Jedi Purge lies not only in the betrayal that ended their order, but also in the missed opportunities to foresee and prevent it. The dark side's ability to cloud their vision, combined with their own detachment from their spiritual roots, ensured that the warnings of the past went unheeded. This failure underscores one of the central themes of Star Wars, that even the most powerful and wise are not immune to their flaws, and that the Force, in its infinite complexity, always moves in ways beyond complete understanding. The Nightsisters of Dathomir, steeped in their unique blend of dark side magic and mysticism, remain one of the most fascinating forces in the galaxy. Their mysterious practices and tragic story are integral to the Star Wars mythos, particularly during the events of the Clone Wars. While theories about their influence on the Sith's rise are intriguing, such claims must be carefully framed within the boundaries of canon. While the Nightsisters' dark magic undoubtedly intersected with themes of immortality and resurrection pursued by the Sith, their relationship was far more nuanced than direct collaboration. To explore their role in galactic history, one must consider their cultural distinctiveness, their connection to the dark side, and their ultimate downfall. The Nightsisters were a matriarchal society led by powerful figures like Mother Talzin, who wielded authority over the clan with unmatched skill in magic. Their culture revolved around a deep connection to Dathomir, a planet suffused with dark side energy. Unlike the Sith, who used the dark side for power and dominance, the Nightsisters tapped into this energy through ancient rituals, blending it with spells and other mystical practices unique to their lineage. This magic allowed them to manipulate life and death, control others' minds, and create formidable warriors such as the Night Brothers. While there is no evidence of direct collaboration between the Sith and the Nightsisters in ancient times, their paths may have crossed due to shared interests in the dark side. The Sith sought to dominate the galaxy through fear and power, while the Nightsisters used magic to protect their clan and assert their influence on Dathomir. The differences in their approaches were stark. Nightsister magic required collective effort, often rooted in ritual and community, whereas Sith techniques emphasized individual power and the rule of two. These distinctions make it unlikely that the Sith and Nightsisters work together directly, but do suggest that their knowledge and practices occasionally overlapped or influenced one another. A significant link between the Sith and the Nightsisters lies in the story of Mother Talzin and Darth Sidious. Talzin was a formidable figure, her mastery of dark side magic rivaling the power of Jedi and Sith alike. According to her account, Sidious approached her years before the Clone Wars, promising her great power in exchange for her knowledge. This partnership soured when Sidious took her son, Maul, to train as his apprentice, severing his connection to Dathomir and the Nightsisters. While Talzin claimed to have been betrayed, the nature of their earlier interactions remains shrouded in mystery. It is possible that Sidious gleaned some understanding of Nightsister magic during this time, though his primary focus on immortality was rooted in Sith teachings, particularly those passed down by his own master, Darth Plagueis. Darth Plagueis's influence on Sidious is critical to understanding the Sith's pursuit of immortality. Plagueis's experiments with the Force aim to manipulate life and death, seeking to conquer mortality through midichlorian manipulation. Sidious inherited these ambitions, blending them with his own plans for galactic domination. While there are thematic parallels between Sith immortality pursuits and Nightsister magic, such as their ability to resurrect the dead or bind spirits, their methods and philosophies were distinct. The Sith relied on the Force as a weapon of individual supremacy, whereas the Nightsisters' magic was tied to their collective identity and spiritual connection to Dathomir. The role of Asajj Ventress further ties the Nightsisters to the larger events of the Clone Wars and highlights their tragic fate. Ventress, a former Jedi Padawan turned Sith assassin, sought refuge with the Nightsisters after Count Dooku betrayed her. Her return to Dathomir reconnected her with her people and allowed Mother Talzin to craft a plan for revenge against Dooku. This vendetta ultimately led to the Nightsisters' downfall. When Dooku learned of the plot, he ordered General Grievous to attack Dathomir, resulting in the massacre of the Nightsisters. While Sidious likely approved of this attack, given his broader plans for the Sith and the galaxy, it was not part of a direct scheme to eliminate the Nightsisters. Rather, it was a consequence of Ventress's actions and Dooku's need to maintain his position as Sidious's apprentice. The destruction of the Nightsisters marked the end of their significant influence in the galaxy, but their legacy endured through figures like Ventress and Maul. Ventress, though not a traditional Nightsister by the time of her death, carried their teachings and resilience with her as she sought redemption. Maul, shaped by both his Nightsister heritage and Sith training, became a living embodiment of the intersection between these two dark side traditions. His ability to survive his defeat by Obi-Wan Kenobi and his later rise as a criminal mastermind reflect the enduring influence of both the Sith and the Nightsisters on his character. Dathomir itself remains a potent symbol of the Nightsisters' legacy. The planet's connection to the dark side, combined with its unique flora and fauna, made it a place of immense power and danger. Even after the Nightsisters' demise, their magic lingered, as seen in later encounters with the planet in Star Wars Rebels and Jedi Fallen Order. These stories reinforce the idea that the Nightsisters' influence on the galaxy was not entirely extinguished, even if their clan was destroyed. One of the most compelling aspects of the Nightsisters' story is the contrast between their approach to the dark side and that of the Sith. The Nightsisters used their magic to protect their community and assert their independence, while the Sith sought to dominate and control. This difference underscores the diversity within the dark side and the many ways in which it could be wielded. The Nightsisters' practices, though rooted in the dark side, were not inherently aligned with the Sith's ambitions, highlighting the complexity of the Force and its users. The theory that the Nightsisters influenced the Sith's rise is rooted in these thematic and philosophical overlaps. While the Sith did not directly adopt Nightsister magic, their shared interest in life, death, and power suggests a subtle interplay between the two traditions. Sidious's interactions with Talzin and his awareness of Dathomir's dark side energy may have informed some of his strategies, but his pursuit of immortality and resurrection was primarily driven by Sith teachings and the legacy of Darth Plagueis. Ultimately, the Nightsisters' story is one of power, resilience, and loss. Their mastery of dark side magic set them apart from other Force traditions, but it also made them targets in the galaxy's larger conflicts. Their downfall at the hands of Grievous and the Separatists underscores the fragility of their position and the broader tragedy of the Clone Wars. Yet, their influence persists both through the characters they shaped and the themes they embodied. The Nightsisters' connection to the Sith, while indirect, adds depth to their role in the Star Wars saga. It highlights the interconnectedness of the galaxy's dark side traditions and the ways in which knowledge and power can transcend boundaries. Their legacy serves as a reminder of the diversity within the Force and the many paths it offers, paths that can lead to great strength but also to profound tragedy.